it's Nina with Walla Stamping. Thank you for joining me in my craft room today. I have this awesome cool card that I've recently discovered, and everywhere that I've seen it, they've called it the Impossible Card. Can you tell why? Well, when you look at this card, it looks super complicated. It looks as though you've got several pieces of paper put together to make this card, when in actuality, it is one piece of cardstock. And you're probably thinking to yourself, how in the heck do you make that card with a single piece of cardstock? I'm going to show you how it's done, and you are just going to be in awe when you see how easy this card is to make. And one of the things that I love about this card is the fact that it can sit on a desk or a table or a shelf, or whenever you give it to someone, they can display it wherever they want to, and every time they look at it, they're going to think of you and how special you made them feel by giving them this beautiful, awesome, cool card. So let me set this to the side and let's get started, and we'll make this card. The first thing we're going to do is a score line. I'm just going to use my Simply Scored, and I'm making my card 6 by 6. Now there are lots of these out there that I've seen, everywhere from a 5 by 7 to numerous different sizes, but I decided to go with 6 by 6 because I wanted this panel in the middle to be 3 by 3. So that's why I've decided on this size. So we're just going to make a score line at 3 inches right down the middle. That's it. That's all we need to do as far as scoring goes. You can actually use your Stampin' trimmer to do that part with if you like, because we are going to be using the Stampin' trimmer for some of these other parts. So got the score line running horizontal right here. I'm going to line my cardstock up right here on the 1.5 inch mark. I've got my cutting blade right here. I'm going to slide that cutting blade down to that 3 inch mark where the center score line is. Then I'm going to flip this around, line that up at 1.5 inches again on this side, put my trimming blade down here and make sure I've got that straight, slide up to that 3 inch score line right there. So that part is simple, right? Now I'm going to line this up at 3 inches, put my trimming blade or cutting blade in at 3 inches, and slide right up to the top. So see what we have here? We have a cut line in the middle and 2 cut lines here. Now comes the really cool part of getting this twisted into shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little tab right here, and then I'm going to grab this tab and the center tab, and I'm just going to twist. And I don't know how that piece of washi tape got on my cardstock. That is hilarious. So then we've got that. Gonna lay this down and fold just like that. Now how easy is this card to make? That is the card base right there. It's already magical. It's ready to go. It's ready to be having all of its prettiness put on there. We're going to continue to use our trimmer to cut out some of our other panels. I've got a couple of pieces of powder pink here. What I'm going to do is take this one, and this is cut to 5 3/4 by 2 3/4, and I forgot to tell you, if you haven't already noticed, at the beginning and the end of the video is a list of all of the supplies that I've used to create this card. There's also a list in the description box that's below the video, as well as over on my blog. So you can get a list of everything that I've used in numerous places. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to line this piece up. Again, it's 5 3/4 by 2 3/4. I'm going to line it up long ways at 2 3/4 right here. I'm going to move both of those blades out of the way, and I'm just very lightly going to take a pencil, and that line is as crooked as a dog's hind leg, but it's okay. Then I'm going to turn my cardstock this way and line it up at 1.5 inches. Put my cutting blade up here and slice down to that mark right there, which you should end up around at 3 inches on your cardstock down the center. Then I'm going to take my scissors and cut right there and just remove that piece. Then I'm just going to erase this little line that I've made. So I'm going to do that one more time. Line that up at 2 3/4. And you can make just a short line in the middle like that. It's just a place for you to know where to stop cutting. Turn that and line that up at 1.5 inches. Cut down, which will end up being a 3-inch cut right there. And then again, just cut straight across right here, cutting that little piece out, and then erase your little pencil mark. Pretty simple. So you'll have two that are the same, just like that. Now I'm going to move on to my Cake Soirée Designer Series paper, and I have to tell you, I'm really sad that this paper is going to be retiring because I just love it, because y'all know that I love anything that has shimmer or glimmer or shine or sparkles to it, and because this Specialty Designer Series paper has all of the silver in it, I really did enjoy using it. But I have to tell you, in the new catalog, there is so much pretty stuff coming out. I cannot wait until I am able to share all of the cool things that are in this new catalog with you. You're going to lose your mind when you see what Stampin' Up! Has come out with. They have just really gone above and beyond on the new stamp sets and the colors and just everything this year. You're going to be so excited when you get to see it. So I have these two pieces, and both of these are cut to 5.5 by 2.5. Again, just like I did the first time, I'm going to put it in on the long side. The only difference is I'm going to make my mark at 2.5 inches, and then I'm going to turn it long ways. And actually what I'm doing, I didn't say this before, is I'm turning it so that the 2.5 section is down here at the bottom. Line that up again at the 1.5 inch mark, and then I'm going to be cutting down, and again you'll end up at the 3-inch mark on your ruler, which is on your cutting well, I guess, I don't know what you call this, the cutting ruler. That's what we'll call it. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with this piece right here. So when we're done with this, this is what we're going to be left with, are these two panels. You're just going to adhere both of these together. Alrighty, I've got both of those together. Now let me introduce a couple of more pieces. These two pieces, or actually these 4 pieces I should say, are going to end up here and here. And the purpose of those is to keep your card stable and not, well, let me show you. See how this is just kind of wonky? When you put those two together, it's going to keep it from moving around and keep its shape the way it ought to be. So what this is this is the back side of this paper. I didn't want all of my paper to be the exact same, so I decided to use both sides of this Designer Series paper. I'm just going to stick both of these pieces on top of my cardstock. Now I have some scraps here, and as you can see, I did just dig into my scrap drawer. I have some Island Indigo, and I have some Old Olive, and there is not Island Indigo in this paper anywhere, but I do like the way that this coordinates with all of the colors in my Designer Series paper, so I am going with it. Now I'm using the Blossom Builder Punch. This is one of my favorites, and also the stamp set that I'm using is the Bunch of Blossoms stamp set. And basically all I'm using out of this is my sentiment, which I've chosen, Let's Celebrate Your Day. This punch and this stamp set, in my opinion, is a must-have to have in your stash of stamps and punches because it is so very versatile. So what I'm going to do, and the reason I have just scraps like this, is because as you can see, these punches are all around this card. Well, what I'm going to do is this little portion right here, which is designed to be the inside of a larger flower, I'm going to use as my flower. So I just have my cardstock here. I'll punch a flower, and then I can just cut that piece away, stick that in there again, and punch the next one, and just keep going like this. Then I'm going to do my leaves next in the same exact manner. Punch out a leaf, trim off that little piece, and punch the next leaf. So I've got my Island Indigo ink here, and I'm just taking that and popping some color on the tips of each of my flower petals. This just helps to give everything a little more dimension. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and add Old Olive to all of the tips of my leaves. While I have all of my inks out and going, I might as well stamp my sentiment. I'm just doing that on a scrap piece of some Whisper White with my basic black archival ink pad. And it's a good thing that this is retiring, because as you can see, my ink pad looks horrendous. So the only thing that's changing is we're still going to have a basic black, but instead of being the basic black archival, it's going to go into the regular line of colors, and then we're going to use Black Stays On and Tuxedo Black Memento ink in its place for permanent type inks. I'm going to be using my Stitched Shapes Framelits dies, which is one of my favorites, as well as another of my favorites, my layering ovals. So what I'll do is I'll take my layering oval and my sentiment. I'm going to use the smallest oval to cut out my sentiment with. I'm going to take my largest of the square Stitched Shapes Framelits dies to cut out my pink cardstock. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you, which I've already prepared most of everything, didn't want to bore you with all that, but I have my two flowers here, and I'm just going to take the rounded end of my piercing tool and push that down into the center of each of those flowers. Pop a little bit of glue in there. Then for my leaves, I'm just taking the end of my stylus and just running it right down through the center of each of those leaves. And that's going to give everything a cupped kind of a texture to it, which makes it look a little more realistic. Then once all of my flowers are together and the glue has had a minute to set up, I just go back in and punch down in the very center of each of those. And you know that I cannot have flowers without a center, especially a sparkly center. So I'm going to use my basic jewels, my rhinestones. And I'm using the largest ones. I tried using the smaller ones, but it just didn't look right. So I'm going to be using the largest rhinestones to put in the center of each of these flowers. If you don't like rhinestones, that's perfectly okay. You could use some pearls or any other embellishment that you would prefer, but the rhinestones just really make this so pretty. Now let's start putting our card together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to layer this piece, which is 3 by 3, into place. I'm just going to be using my fast fuse for this. You could also use snail, or you could use some liquid glue, but just so that I don't have to try to hold it in place, I'm going to go ahead and use my fast fuse. So get that put in place. And you could also decorate the back side if you like. Then this piece will go on next. Put that right there in the center. And by the way, the directions that I have on my blog is actually going to be for all of the product that I've used with this card. So at least you know what I've used in this as far as the colors. Everything else is the same except for the colors, but all of the measurements and all that are identical. Okay, so we have that. I'm just going to go ahead and use my fast fuse. It's quicker than liquid glue. So I'm going to use that to stick these in place. So put that one there. Put this one over here on this side. Then we're going to take these two pieces, which are the ones that keep everything kind of stable and in place. I'm going to use my grid paper to make sure that I have everything straight. I'm just lining these two cut edges up with the grid lines on my paper. I want those little swirlies going up and down. Put that right there. Then flip it around. Put the second one in place. To put my sentiment in place, I'm going to throw a couple of dimensionals on the back. Then that is going to go right side up and right here in the center. Then what I have found easier for me to do is to put my leaves in place first. and then put the flowers on top. You can use whatever adhesive you prefer, so I'm going to put a leaf right there and down here, and then put my first flower right there in between the two of them. So I'm going to speed up the video so that you don't have to sit here and watch me do all of these in slow-mo, but at least you'll get to see how I place them. So here we are. I've got my card all together. How cute is that? Now, I will suggest, if you plan on sending this through the mail, which you can, I would not put a flower right here. Oops, my glue is still wet, where this cannot lay down flat. Well, I guess you could lay it down flat that way. But if you're going to make this card with dimensional embellishments like these flowers, you definitely want to present the card not in an envelope so that you don't have to flatten out any of your flowers. Now, if you want to send it through the mail or put it in an envelope to give it to someone, then just use embellishments that can be flattened, that don't have any dimension to them at all. So let me bring back in my first card and we'll look at both of them. I did them in different color schemes. I like them both. They've got some of my favorite colors, but I think that this card is absolutely one of the coolest things that I've ever created or put together, which sadly, it is not my idea. I have seen this card in lots of different places and decided to put my own spin on it, make my own size, and share it with you today. So I hope that you enjoyed it. Now make sure that you remember when you go over to my blog to get the instructions along with the measurements and supplies to create a card like this, that you don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. My newsletter family is the first to get information, promotions, exclusive tutorials before anybody else does. So make sure you sign up for that email newsletter list. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today and that I have encouraged you and inspired you to create this card for someone that you care about. If you have any questions, just send me an email to nina@wallastamping.com. If you want any of the supplies that you've seen me use, I've listed all the places where you can get the supplies listed for you, and you can shop at my online store by going to wallastamping.com/order SU. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.